So I just got back from the Apple event here in New York, and they just announced a bunch of brand new MacBook Pros with M3. Not a lot has changed in terms of design, but one thing they did do was completely get rid of the MacBook Pro 13. Like, it was bound to happen, and they finally did it this year. The good news though is they replaced it with a MacBook Pro 14. You can now buy a MacBook Pro 14 with base M3. This is pretty important because a lot of people want something that's between the MacBook Air 13 and 15, but want the ability to get a mini LED display. They want the option to get more ports. They want the better speakers, the better battery life, but they don't want to pay extra for CPU and GPU they don't need. So this new MacBook Pro 14 gives them that. Plus there's fans built inside, so theoretically it can push performance longer because it can keep the chip cooler. So that's a good thing. And you don't have to spend more money on a more expensive M3 Pro or M3 Max. Now, if you are planning on buying a MacBook Pro 14 with M3 Pro or M3 Max, you can now get it in a new color called Space Black. I went hands-on with it. It looks really good. It's a nice kind of matte black, but I'm worried about fingerprints, you know, like they are using this new anodized seal, which is supposed to prevent fingerprints. It's still gonna get fingerprints. Based on my testing and touching it and looking at other people touching it, it's much better than the Midnight Black that was on the MacBook Air. That thing got super dirty very, very quickly. This one still gets dirty, but it's not as drastic. They did have someone standing there wiping it down every time someone touched it. Now, these new M3 chips are obviously running on the 3nm architecture, so this is a big leap forward for Apple compared to M1 and M2. The overall performance is hard to say because, you know, these are Apple benchmarks. They tend to like not show you exactly what they're comparing it to and just have, you know, numbers that are higher than the previous one, but you don't know what they're really testing. But if what they're showing is true, like this is a pretty big deal. Like, for example, if you're buying an M3 Pro, it still comes with a 12-core CPU and an 18-core GPU. This is kind of weird because the M2 Pro had a 19-core GPU, so you're actually getting slightly less, but because the chip is faster overall, it's gonna perform faster than the previous M2 Pro. The other weird thing is there's only 150 gigabytes a second of memory bandwidth with the M3 Pro compared to 200 gigabytes a second of memory bandwidth on the M2 Pro. So again, it seems like we're taking one step back, but because the chip is overall faster and they're introducing this new thing called GPU dynamic caching, overall performance should be higher. So again, these are things we need to test. But they are adding some new features, which I feel like a lot of people are going to appreciate. Like if you buy a MacBook Pro 16, the media engines are still incredible, and it's getting the ability to encode and decode AV1. This is something that like I didn't think was going to come to MacBooks, but it finally is. Another thing to note is if you buy a MacBook Pro 16, it's still getting a mini LED display. I don't know if they're using a new one, but it seems like they're buffing it a bit. So for example, it still hits 1600 nits of peak brightness. It still sustains 1000 nits of typical brightness. But if you're using SDR mode, it goes up to 600 nits of brightness, which is 20% brighter than the previous MacBook Pro. Oh, I should also mention, if you are planning on buying the MacBook Pro 14 with just M3, you're getting one less USB Type-C port compared to MacBook Pro 14 with M3 Pro or M3 Pro Max. So keep that in mind if you're buying that. I don't think it's a big deal because overall you're still getting more ports. You're just losing one Type-C port. Either way, I'm gonna be getting all of these laptops into the studio. Again, this is the M2 Max from the previous year. It's still super duper fast. And I feel like if you're buying an M3 Max, you're doing something that's very, very specialized where you really need that extra performance. But if you're like a general video creator like myself, this performance is more than plenty. But you know, Apple is pushing boundaries. They want to have like the fastest hardware with the best battery life, and this M3 is taking that to the next level. And if you're also interested in iMacs have been replenished. They are now using an M3 processor, same colors, same 24-inch display, same speaker, same design, same everything, but it's now faster than the previous M1 that they used to offer. Again, please get your questions below because I want to do a really in-depth review on all of these MacBooks so that I can show you what they can do so you can make the right decision. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one.